I want to describe a moment that nobody else sees. You pull into your driveway after work. You turn the engine off. The radio cuts out. Silence. By all logic, you should unbuckle, open the door, and go inside to your family or your dinner. But you don't. You sit there. You stare at the garage door or the steering wheel. You aren't checking your phone. You aren't planning tomorrow. You are just floating in the dead air. You might stay there for 5 minutes, maybe 10. If someone knocks on the window, you jump and a flash of irritation spikes through your chest. You feel guilty about it later, wondering why you couldn't just walk through the front door. You wonder why a simple day at the office left you unable to perform the basic task of exiting a vehicle. I am here to tell you that this isn't laziness. It isn't being antisocial. It is a biological safety mechanism. You are performing a manual reboot on a nervous system that is dangerously close to crashing. The world has a lot of names for this feeling. They call it flakiness, when you cancel plans at the last second because the idea of noise makes you want to cry. They call it oversensitive, when you have to cut the tags out of your shirts because the friction feels like sandpaper. And the medical world often calls it poor sleep hygiene. They tell you that you are tired because you didn't get your 8 hours. So you try. You go to bed early. You black out the room. You drink the chamomile. You get the full 8, maybe even 9 hours. And you wake up, still heavy, still foggy, still feeling like there is a lead blanket draped over your brain. That is the moment you realize the math doesn't add up. Sleep isn't fixing it. That's because you aren't sleep deprived. You are suffering from something I call sensory bankruptcy. Let's look at the hardware. In psychology, there is a trait known as sensory processing sensitivity, or SPS. Researchers estimate that about 30% of the population has this trait. If you are one of them, your nervous system is wired differently. It is built without the standard filters that other people have. Imagine the average brain has a spam filter that catches the background noise, the hum of the refrigerator, the flickering LED light, the smell of your coworker's coffee, the subtle tension in a meeting. The average brain ignores these things automatically. Your brain does not. Your brain processes every single one of them as high-priority data. Neuroimaging studies show that people with high SPS have increased activity in the insular and the prefrontal cortex, areas responsible for deep processing and emotional awareness. This means that simply sitting in a room costs you more energy than it costs someone else. You are running a 4K video on a mobile data plan. No matter how much you charge the battery at night, the data drain during the day is simply too high. You aren't broken. You are just running high-definition software in a low-resolution world. Think about your computer browser. You know what happens when you have 50 tabs open? The fan starts spinning, the cursor lags, the whole system heats up. The computer isn't broken, it's just doing too much at once. That is your brain by 2 p.m. Clinicians describe this lived experience as having too many tabs open. Every conversation you had, every notification that dinged, every texture you touched, they are all still open in the background, consuming RAM. When you try to focus on a new task, you feel that lag, that irritability, that snap reaction when someone asks you a simple question like, "What's for dinner?" and you feel a sudden rage. That rage isn't about dinner. It's the error message of a system that has zero processing power left. You are suffering from cognitive leaking. You are spending energy just to keep the tabs open, leaving nothing for the actual work of living. And this brings us to the most dangerous misconception about your exhaustion: the belief that sleep is the only reset button. Here is the trap. We are taught that sleep cleans the brain. And it does. It flushes out toxins. It consolidates memory. But sleep is primarily a metabolic reset. It restores the fuel. It does not necessarily close the tabs. A 2025 study on overstimulation found that for high-sensitivity individuals, the feeling of overload was driven by the current sensory context. That means if you wake up fully rested, but immediately walk into a chaotic kitchen, check your email, and hear the news, your battery drains in minutes. You can sleep for 12 hours, but if your waking environment is stripping your nervous system, you will feel fried by noon. A sleep psychologist at Michigan Medicine makes a crucial distinction here. There is a difference between sleepiness, meaning you could doze off right now, and fatigue or burnout. If you are exhausted but wired, if you are tired but can't nap, you don't need more sleep cycles. You need sensory gating. You need to stop the input. Because right now, you are trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. Let's get specific about what this drain feels like physically. It's usually small things. It's the seam on your sock that suddenly feels like a knife. It's the sound of someone chewing gum that makes your jaw clench. It's the brightness of the overhead lights in the grocery store that makes you feel slightly dizzy. These are what psychologists call low-threshold responses. When your buffer is full, your tolerance for sensory friction drops to 0. You might find yourself snapping at your partner for breathing too loudly. You might feel a desperate need to get out of your clothes the second you walk in the door because the fabric feels too heavy. This is somatic signaling. Your body is screaming that it is at capacity. The world tells you to toughen up. They say, it's just a noise, ignore it. But you literally cannot. Your biology is prioritizing that noise. And fighting that prioritization, trying to act normal, costs even more energy. Let's validate this with biology. Processing sensory input is metabolically expensive. The brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. But for someone with sensory processing sensitivity, that number can spike during high stimulation periods. When you are in a crowded room, your amygdala, the threat detector, and your insula, the internal monitor, are firing rapidly. They are assessing, is this face friendly? What is that sound? Is the temperature changing? This state of hypervigilance floods the system with cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. It mobilizes sugar for energy. But if you are sitting at a desk, you aren't burning that sugar. You are just stewing in a chemical soup of fight or flight. This creates a background hum of anxiety, a steady drain. By the end of the day, your muscles are tight, your digestion is off, and your head throbs. This is sensory burnout. It is a physical condition caused by data overload. And the cure for burnout is not unconsciousness, sleep. It is the deliberate removal of the load. It is stopping the tax. I want to pause here because I can hear the narrative in your head. You are thinking, great, so I am just weaker than everyone else. I am high maintenance. That is the wrong frame. This sensitivity is an evolutionary trade-off. Yes, you pay a higher cost for noise, but you also buy a higher quality of data. This deep processing allows you to read a room instantly. You know when your friend is sad before they say a word. You notice the pattern in the data that everyone else missed. You are the canary in the coal mine. In a tribe, the person with high sensory sensitivity was the watchman. They heard the twigs snap in the forest. They smelled the smoke first. Your nervous system is designed for detection and depth. The problem is not your wiring. The problem is that you are a delicate instrument trying to function in an industrial rock crusher. You don't need to change your instrument. You need to learn how to put it in its case. So, if sleep is just charging the battery, how do we stop the drain? We have to look at a concept called Restricted Environmental Stimulation Therapy, or REST. In the 1950s, scientists began experimenting with sensory deprivation. They wanted to see what happened to the brain when you took everything away. No light, no sound, no gravity, no touch. The hypothesis was that the brain might panic. The reality was the opposite. The brain sighed with relief. When you remove the external inputs, the nervous system stops defending itself. The cortisol drops. The brain waves shift from the rapid-fire beta waves of anxiety into the slow, rhythmic theta waves of deep meditation and early sleep. This is the state where healing happens. You don't need a fancy flotation tank to understand this principle, though we will talk about those. You just need to understand the concept of radical low input. Before we get to the solution, we have to address the biggest drain of all: other people. Or rather, the performance of being around other people. High sensitivity individuals often engage in what we call social masking. You force eye contact even when it feels intense. You nod and smile at the small talk, even though your brain finds it excruciatingly boring. You suppress your reaction to the loud laughter at the next table. This is emotional labor, and it is exhausting. A 2025 study showed that for HSPs, overstimulation was significantly higher in the presence of others. Not because you don't like people, but because processing a human being is the most complex task a brain can do. A human has micro-expressions, tone of voice, pheromones, and complex emotional needs. Your brain is tracking all of it. If you spend 8 hours on performing normality, filtering your reactions, you are running a marathon. No wonder you want to sit in the dark car. You aren't antisocial, you are just peopled out. Your social RAM is full. We often confuse this with introversion, but they aren't the same thing. You can be an extrovert and still have sensory processing sensitivity. You can love people, love parties, and love connection, but still hit a wall where your system crashes. The difference is the recovery time. The extrovert with SPS might leave the party buzzing, but then suffer a sensory hangover the next day. Headaches, lethargy, irritability. The world calls this moody. You might be accused of being hot and cold. You were so fun last night. Why are you a grump today? It's because you spent your sensory capital. You went into debt. And now the bank is collecting. Recognizing this pattern is the first step. You have to stop viewing your energy as a limitless resource that just needs willpower to access. It is a finite account, and everything costs something. Let's go deeper into the neuroscience of doing nothing. When you aren't focused on a task, a network in your brain called the default mode network, DMN, takes over. This is the part of the brain responsible for self-reference, remembering the past, and planning the future. In people with anxiety or high sensitivity, the DMN can be hyperactive. It's that voice that replays the awkward thing you said 5 years ago. It's the voice that worries about the meeting tomorrow. This is internal noise. So you have external noise, the world, and internal noise, the DMN. Sleep quiets the external, but often leaves the DMN running. That's why you have weird stress dreams. Sensory deprivation, however, has been shown to quiet the DMN. When there is no new data to process, and the body is totally safe, the brain finally feels permission to stop the chatter. It shifts into monitoring mode rather than defense mode. This is why 10 minutes of sensory reduction can sometimes feel more restorative than an hour of nap. You are manually turning off the internal narrator. The most extreme version of this is the float tank, a dark, soundproof pod filled with salt water. You float effortlessly. The water is skin temperature, so you lose track of where your body ends and the water begins. For the first 10 minutes, it's chaos. Your brain panics. It screams, "Where is the phone? Where is the danger? What time is it?" It is looking for input. But if you push through that initial withdrawal, something magic happens. the brain realizes there is no tiger, there is no email, there is no gravity. It stops sending the keep upright signals to your muscles. Your neck releases tension you didn't know you had. The sensory inputs drop to near zero. In this state, studies show significant drops in blood pressure and cortisol. People report a feeling of resetting that lasts for days. You don't need to buy a tank to get this, but you do need to replicate the conditions. You need a space where the world cannot get in. Here is the practical application. I want you to try the dark room habit. When you get home, before you do the chores, before you cook, before you scroll, go to a room. Close the blinds. Put on an eye mask if you have to. Earplugs in. Lie on the floor, not the bed. The floor provides a different grounding sensation. And do absolutely nothing for 15 minutes. No podcast, no meditation app guiding you. Just silence and darkness. You are simulating the float tank. You are manually closing the sensory gates. You might feel bored. You might feel anxious. That is the withdrawal. Stay with it. By minute 12, you will feel a shift, a lowering of the shoulders, a slowing of the breath. You are allowing your nervous system to catch up with the day's data intake. You are clearing the cache. When you stand up, you will not be fixed, but you will be reset. You will have the bandwidth to face the evening. We have to talk about what you usually do instead of the darkroom. You scroll. You lie on the couch and stare at your phone. You think this is resting because your body is still, but your eyes are darting. Your brain is processing text, images, colors, outrage, dopamine hits, and ads. This is not rest. This is junk food stimulation. It feels good in the moment because it numbs you, but it is keeping the processing centers of your brain firing at maximum capacity. You are adding data to a full hard drive. This is why you can spend 2 hours on TikTok and feel more exhausted than when you started. You are experiencing passively acquired fatigue. You are engaging the very circuits that need to recover. To fix sensory bankruptcy, you must be ruthless about low input time. If light is entering your eyes, you are not resting. If words are entering your ears, you are not resting. You have to be bored to be healed. When you start protecting your sensory bandwidth, you notice something amazing. Your intuition comes back. When you aren't drowning in noise, you can hear yourself think again. Many high-sensitivity people feel lost or indecisive because the signal-to-noise ratio in their life is too low. The world is too loud for them to hear their own gut instinct. By creating these pockets of sensory deprivation, these airlocks in your day, you clean the signal. You start making better decisions. You become more creative. Because creativity requires empty space. It requires a brain that isn't running at 100% CPU usage just to survive the grocery store. You aren't just doing this to feel less tired. You are doing this to get your mind back. You are reclaiming the processing power that the modern world is trying to steal from. Let's talk about gear. For the sensitive person, noise-cancelling headphones are not a luxury item. They are a prosthetic. They are a medical device. I know people who wear them with no music playing, just to dampen the world. This is valid. If you have a broken leg, you use a crutch. If you have a porous sensory filter, you use a shield. Do not let people shame you for wearing sunglasses indoors if the fluorescents hurt. Do not let them shame you for leaving the party early. You are managing a biological resource. When you reduce the input, you increase your endurance. If you wear the headphones during the commute, you might have enough energy to talk to your partner over dinner. It is a budgeting exercise. Every decibel you block out is a unit of energy you save for something that actually matters to you. But there is a deeper reason why this matters. It's not just about headaches. It's about who you are. Chronic sensory overload makes you a version of yourself that you don't like. It makes you brittle. It makes you self-absorbed, because when you are in pain, you can't think of others. You might feel like you are a bad friend or a distant parent. You might think you have lost your spark. You haven't. Your spark is just buried under a mountain of static. When you clear the static, the empathy returns. The joy returns. The ability to laugh at a joke returns. You are not a grumpy person. You are an overwhelmed person. The tragedy is that the people who need this rest the most, the sensitive, the empaths, the deep thinkers, are the ones who feel the most guilty about taking it. You feel you should be able to handle it. But should is not a strategy. Biology is a strategy. We also need to look at your rhythms. The body loves predictability. For a sensitive nervous system, unpredictability is another form of noise. If your schedule is chaotic, your brain is constantly calculating new variables. This burns energy. Establishing rigid routines acts as a cognitive offload. If you eat the same breakfast, wear the same style of clothes, and take the same route to work, you are freeing up processing power. You are automating the basics so you can spend your expensive energy on the complexities. Steve Jobs wearing the black turtleneck wasn't just fashion, it was sensory management. He was reducing the number of decisions, and therefore the amount of data he had to process. Look at your life. Where is the friction? Where are the unnecessary choices? Streamline them. Boring is good. Boring is restful. Boring is the foundation of brilliance. If the dark room feels too intense, look to the horizon. Our eyes are evolved to look at distances, to scan the savannah. Modern life forces us to focus on screens 12 inches from our face. This near work creates immense strain on the visual cortex and the eye muscles, which feeds back into the nervous system as stress. This is why looking at the ocean or a forest feels instantly calming. It isn't just poetry, it's optics. The fractal patterns of nature, leaves, waves, clouds, are soft focus stimuli. They are complex but effortless to process. Your brain slides over them without snagging. Spending 20 minutes walking in a park without your phone is a form of sensory therapy. You are feeding your brain the data it was designed to eat, rather than the high fructose corn syrup of the digital world. It is a nutritional reset for your senses. So, let's wrap this up. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are living with a high-performance engine in a world designed for economy cars. You are taking in more data, feeling more depth, and processing more nuance than the average person. This comes with a cost. That cost is sensory bankruptcy. You cannot sleep your way out of this debt. You have to pay it down with silence. You have to pay it down with boundaries. You have to pay it down by periodically stepping out of the stream of information and letting your system cool down. The next time you find yourself sitting in the driveway, staring at nothing, don't judge yourself. Recognize it. Say, I am rebooting. Say, I am protecting my spark. And then, when you are ready, go inside. Not because you have to, but because you have recovered the capacity to be the person you actually want to be. If this resonates with you, if you are the person who cuts the tags out of shirts or turns down the radio to park the car, you are not alone. There is a whole tribe of us who are navigating this noisy world. I want you to try the dark room habit this week. Just once. See what happens. And if you want to understand more about your wiring, about why you feel things so intensely, make sure you are subscribed. We're going to keep exploring the manual for the high sensitivity mind. Protect your peace. Guard your bandwidth. I'll see you in the quiet.